All right, so we're going to talk about semicolons. Semicolons, there are three major rules for semicolons that we are going to talk about. Your first basic rule is you should use a semicolon in place of the comma and conjunction to separate the two independent clauses in a compound sentence. So, you need to have a clear grasp of what an independent clause is in order to use a semicolon. If you would look at the example here, you see it says, I like working outside, semicolon, I also enjoy reading. Both of those clauses, I like working outside and I also enjoy reading, can stand on their own. They have a subject, they have a verb, they have a complete thought, so they're called independent clauses. You could have a period where the semicolon is and it would work fine. You could have a comma and an and, or any of the other fanboys, and it would work as well. It could read, I like working outside, comma, and I also enjoy reading. A semicolon is just another way to combine two independent clauses. And this is how the semicolon is most frequently used, the way that it's used here in rule number 1. Now, if you are using a semicolon, you need to make sure that the two independent clauses are related. So, for instance, I like working outside, I also enjoy reading. Those are both talking about things you enjoy. If it said, I like working outside, semicolon, French fries come from France, you would not put a semicolon there because the two independent clauses are not related. So, first rule, use a semicolon in place of the comma and conjunction to separate two independent clauses in a compound sentence. Second rule, very related to the first. Use a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb. Conjunctive adverbs can be words such as however and therefore that joins two independent clauses. Then be sure to put a comma after the conjunctive adverb. So in your example sentence, you'll see it says, I like working outside, semicolon, however, comma, I also enjoy reading. If you were to look at the first independent clause, you'll see it's an independent clause. I like working outside, just like it was earlier. And then after the semicolon, however, comma, I also enjoy reading is also an independent clause. I also enjoy reading is an independent clause. But you have however in here, which is a conjunctive adverb, so you need to make sure to put a comma behind it. Alright, so I like working outside, semicolon, however, comma, I also enjoy reading, works perfectly. You could, again, have a period where it says, I like working outside, period, and then however, comma, I also enjoy reading. Now what you need to make sure is if you are using a semicolon before however, that what is on the first side of the semicolon is an independent clause, and then what is after your conjunctive adverb is also an independent clause. If either one of these is not an independent clause but is instead a dependent clause, then you would not use a semicolon, you would just use a comma according to your comma rules. So if it said only I, however, also enjoy reading, you would not put a semicolon because I is not an independent clause. So your second rule, use a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb that joins two independent clauses. Your third rule is to use semicolons to separate elements in a series if they contain internal punctuation. Your example. On his fishing trip, Jeff caught rainbow, brook, and lake trout, semicolon, largemouth, smallmouth, and white bass, semicolon, and a few northern pike. So in this sentence you can see there are three main types of fish that are caught. Trout, bass, and pike. So those are the three items in a series, but there are three different types of trout that are caught. So you have this internal series here rainbow, comma, brook, comma, and lake trout. So you have a series within your larger series. So to avoid confusion, after each main item in the larger series, you put a semicolon. So you put a semicolon after trout, a semicolon after bass. It would be confusing if you only put a comma here, because you have commas separating rainbow, brook, and lake trout, and then largemouth, smallmouth, and white bass. And we wouldn't understand that rainbow, brook, and lake are all types of trout if this was only a comma here. So in order to separate these elements in a series that contain internal punctuation, we use a semicolon. I'm going to show you a few errors that are often made when it comes to working with semicolons. The first is independent clauses are not on both sides of the semicolon. So here you see 7th grade track meet, semicolon, field events start at 4. This beginning clause is a dependent clause. It does not have a subject and a verb, and it is not a complete thought. So the correct way to say this is the 7th grade track meet is tonight, semicolon, field events start at 4 o'clock. Another error that I see is that people capitalize after the semicolon. This is incorrect. So you do not capitalize what comes after the semicolon. You keep it lowercase. Also, people sometimes put a conjunction after the semicolon. The semicolon removes the need for the conjunction. So you do not need the conjunction. I should just read, there's a 7th grade track meet tonight, semicolon, field events start at 4 o'clock. Then also, as far as that third rule goes, use semicolon in a series only if there are multiple smaller series inside larger series. So sometimes people will put in semicolons where commas should go. At the track meet this evening, there will be red semicolon, white semicolon, and blue jerseys. That's incorrect. Just put commas there because there are no smaller series inside this. But look at the correct one. At the track meet this evening, there will be red, white, and blue jerseys. So that is a series. And then there's a second series, sprints, field events, and distance races. There's your second series. And first, second, and third place finishes. Because there is internal punctuation, you're going to put semicolons in this larger series. So what I want you to do is I want you to write a few practice semicolons. All right, practice using them to separate independent clauses, and then I'd also like you to go through the practice and make sure that you know where to put semicolons in these practice worksheets. All right.